so we got some big boxing news to talk about, and like boxing has been on it lately, dude. I mean, when we first started this podcast a few years ago, boxing was kind of in that weird lull, and it seemed like Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder were the only people making it super interesting, and of course Canelo on the side, but the competition that Canelo was fighting back then wasn't really the same as it is nowadays, and that's kind of the big story that we should start with.
Rivalry fights, pretty much.
Yeah, yeah.
Because we had been waiting a long time to get the super fights that we hadn't seen yet.
And now that Turkey Al Sheikh has really taken over the boxing world, now we're getting probably one of the biggest fights of this decade, definitely the biggest fight of 2025 that they
Yeah,
could
this
book.
is huge. Yeah.
Canelo versus Crawford. It's been made official. After Canelo's victory versus William Skull, Turkey Al Sheikh confirmed it. September 12th, Las Vegas in Allegiant Stadium. They had the face-off in the ring afterwards too. There's so many things that we could talk about with this, but like just in terms of the matchup itself, I mean, these are two of the best boxers pound for pound on the planet right now. And I just, to start off with just the excitement, I can't wait for this. Like, we've been talking about this now for what seems like a year or two on the pod. And we were pretty much right about what was going to be like the weight class and all of that. But before we get into all that, like, just first thoughts when you saw this fight got booked, what was like your reaction to that?
Finally, in a way. Um, it well more on Canelo's part because there's been even though Canelo is and even Terrence Crawford, but Canelo, at this point is gonna go down as one of arguably the greatest and his the greatest in his weight class to ever do it, and it was one of those fights where you had other options for him too, kind of like David Benavidez for instance, and it was one of those. It's one of these things where probably money, obviously a lot of money in this as well, but it was one of those if it's not as if it's not one of these super fights, a dream fight like with Terrence Crawford, then how much does Canelo really need it? So, um,
I mean, he gets out of bed twice a year, Cinco de Mayo weekend, and then I think Mexican Independence Day in September. Like those, that's his schedule. Everybody else has to go to that schedule, that's one of the perks of being Canelo, and also one of the other perks of being Canelo is that since he is the money fight in boxing, he basically holds all the cards, and that was one of the things that we've always talked about on the pod, previewing this possible fight if it were to ever get booked. It is at super middleweight, 168 pounds. Terrence Crawford, the highest he's fought is 154 pounds, so he's going to be going up 14 pounds to fight Canelo, and I think that was pretty expected. But the thing is, like in terms of their size, they're not actually that far off, and even age wise, Canelo he's younger than Terrence Crawford, which is something that you don't really think about because Canelo's been around so long. But then also from Terrence Crawford's perspective, he has a 3.5 inch reach advantage over Canelo, who's technically the bigger guy and has fought in those bigger weight classes. Like, yeah, Canelo, he's like a big, strong dude, but in terms of like height, reach, they're on a more similar level than we really would have initially thought, like before you kind of break down this fight in a detailed way. And to me, that makes it more exciting. And it seems like it's less of a mismatch than maybe we would have initially anticipated. And that makes me really excited for it. And then you also just factor in the fact that these guys are two of the best boxers on the planet. And now we're getting this huge fight for both of their legacies. Because like you said, Canelo can just get out of bed twice a year and get a huge payday, and that's fine.
yeah,
But
pretty
now he
much.
fights a guy in Terrence Crawford who maybe to some isn't as huge of an addition to his legacy, but I think to the casual boxing fan, this is a huge fight, and I think if Canelo can beat Terrence Crawford, that's one of the bigger wins of his career, especially one of his bigger wins recently. So,
Yeah, and I say what I said before too because I think there was more talk around Terrence Crawford's next fight, and I mean we were talking. There was a whether it was a joke serious or not. Like the fact that even Terrence Crawford versus Conor McGregor was being talked about, like for a second, goes to show you that uh, Terrence Crawford, there's still plenty out there for him, but Canelo is probably more or less just beating of just about everybody, and like kind of on the, I don't know how many after this fight, how many more fights is there really out there for Canelo. I mean, yeah, especially for a guy who fights twice the same at the same time every year. So um, yeah, so that, I think it's huge that this was. I think as soon as it was able to get booked too. In the past, this probably would have taken a lot longer. Like
Now that we
speaking
got
of
Turkey
Terrence,
though.
yeah, exactly. Like, you want to speak about Terrence Crawford, like going back to how long you had to wait for him to fight Errol Spence. So, um,
And to that point, like now Terrence Crawford is 37 and he's getting this Canelo fight with in a time that really is towards the end of his career. Like I expect to see Terrence Crawford really angling for those big fights now that they're actually being made in boxing. And this is, I think, the biggest fight of his career and will remain the biggest fight of his career until the very end of it. I mean, Canelo is a legend of the sport and he's fought everybody in multiple generations. And this is a
yeah,
true super fight.
this is one of those fights that, in terms of booking and um, the super fight title, as well as fights you put up there with like Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather, for instance. Just uh, one of those dream fights that you always kind of thought could happen, but uh, who knows the business side of boxing, how much it was going to keep it from happening. And especially at this point in both their careers, too, where they
Yeah.
don't have, it's not like they have all that much left to prove anyway, so.
Yeah. And I think in a way there was almost more of a hurdle to make this fight than there would have been for Mayweather Pacquiao, because at least Mayweather Pacquiao back then, like, they were in the same weight class. It was just the promoters that really just kind of held it up because
Yeah,
they didn't want either guy to lose. And now that we don't really have that problem because of Turkey Al Sheikh, it seems like they all have to work together at this point because there's so much money involved with it. Now we're getting these huge fights booked without a problem, because I think back in those days, if they would have asked to ask Terrence Crawford, if they would have asked Terrence Crawford to go up 14 pounds to fight Canelo, Terrence Crawford's promoters would have been like, no, we're not doing this. But now that Terrence Crawford is out from that like top rank web, and now he's kind of in the mix with all these other promoters, that now we're getting these huge fights, and it's really fun, man. This has been a really fun era for boxing right now, and like now to kind of get into this a little bit before we get into some of the other stories from the weekend with boxing. I mean, it was also confirmed by Turki Al Sheikh that this is going to be Dana White's debut in promoting boxing, and what a fight to get started with Canelo and Crawford. This is going to be the first TKO boxing event. Dana will be in charge of the promotion, with obviously Turki Al Sheikh being there alongside him as well. And talk about planting your feet in the boxing world in a huge way, with getting probably two of the biggest stars in the sport right now, and now one of the biggest fights of the decade. I mean, anyone who is just a fan of our channel versus like a boxing fan, they know that we're MMA guys. So, Dana's getting into boxing, everybody.
yeah,
They're probably all
dude,
so mad.
the
They're like,
boxing crowd hates
the
that.
boxing purists are, well, honestly, if you're a boxing purist, you should be happy because these fights are all getting made now. But yeah, I mean, boxing purists can't stand MMA
Yeah.
for the most part. At least that's what I have come to realize. But I don't know. I think it's getting a little bit better with that nowadays. But
Well, yeah. Well, I know we talk many times on end about how different, like, no matter how which we slice it, MMA and boxing, they're totally different sports. So I think people kind of see that and are like, oh, now Dana's gonna bring that MMA prowess over, and these fights are gonna be a lot more drawn out and just I don't even. I think you should. I think, yeah, like you said, a boxing purist should want a much more kind of technical, kind of drawn out fight. I think, but I mean, especially in boxing, the because knockdowns, knockouts, they really do come like a dime a dozen. Whereas MMA, obviously, you can filter in, even if someone's already on the ground, you can factor in someone up against the cage and drop them that way. So boxing is yeah, it's a lot more technical that way anyway. So I think people see that and they're just so against. Like you don't have to pit MMA against boxing. Like you can enjoy both,
It
just
is
like we
funny.
do.
It's like one of those things where it's like boxing fans sometimes kind of hate on MMA so much, and then MMA fans have like none of that feeling towards boxing. Like MMA fans for the most part like boxing, but boxing fans, like the true boxing purists, the old school boxing purists, they don't like MMA that much. But then like I think about the way, because I'm glad you mentioned this too, like how Dana White, maybe they're a bit afraid or they don't know what's going to happen if Dana kind of brings that same strategy that he's used for MMA over to boxing. I personally think that's a good thing because when you think about what the UFC has done in MMA, they're the premier league of that sport. And right now in boxing, there's the WBC, WBO, WBA, IBF, the ring, and like that's five different ranking systems for the same weight classes. And the thing is, if TKO boxing can maybe position themselves in boxing how the UFC has in MMA at some point, and that's not going to be done overnight, but it can be done. I think that could possibly change the sport completely because if TKO boxing can kind of like take over what the rankings mean, then maybe that area will matter more than those other ones. And I do think that that's something that'll take a lot of time, and we're definitely not even close to that yet. But the fact that TKO boxing is starting off with Canelo versus Crawford for the undisputed super middleweight title, definitely a step in the right direction. You know what I mean? And I'd definitely be curious to see if Dana's kind of top league format will change boxing in a sense. But that's kind of what we have to wonder and keep an eye on moving forward. But then, like, what's up, guys? Sorry to interrupt the podcast real quick, but we have a message for you guys.
If you enjoy her Hamburg's content, you want to see more, consider subscribing to the channel, leaving a like on the videos, all sorts of fight content as much as possible, podcasts, interviews, vlogs. We have it all over here, so thank you, appreciate it.
We appreciate you, and like he said, please subscribe. And now, back to the show. Outside of this, I know that there's plenty of other boxing stories that we could talk about from over the weekend. I don't know if you want to kind of lead off that conversation because we could really start with anybody.
No, it was a very busy weekend for boxing. Like just starting off with this Friday at Golden Boy Promotions had their Fatal Fury, card in Times Square, and in terms of name value, like huge freaking card to be honest. I mean, freaking the main event, and in terms of title implications as well for at least two of the three fights, of the last three fights there. But Riley Romero and Ryan Garcia for the welterweight belt, and Devin Haney versus Jose Ramirez. You had Teofimo Lopez and Arnold Barbosa going at it for a couple lightweight belts. And in terms of name value, title implications, yeah, pretty big stacked card. But the output, performance wise, definitely more to be desired. At least in terms of Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney in particular, the fallout from their fight last year, all the controversy surrounding that, and Devin Haney's performance in particular in that Ryan Garcia fight. You were hoping he could come back on this card. On Ryan Garcia's undercard, mind you, hoping that he could really just turn the lights out and just give everybody a show and even give Ryan Garcia something to really reconsider if Ryan Garcia won his fight. Because if Ryan Garcia won his fight, you already know they were going to do the rematch. But now you have this kind of dilemma where Ryan Garcia not only lost his fight, but he just looked kind of like a shell of himself. Like the whole, you got the whole king moniker. Like you see it every time he's in the ring. He's got the king on the front of his trunks. But it was this fight here was it. Yeah, it just kind of looked like no, not so much anymore. And that's nothing to take away from Riley Romero. Riley Romero is very capable. Rolly Romero can hang with just about anybody. I mean, that was evident when he fought Tank Davis, but this fight here with Ryan Garcia, I mean, at the beginning, it was kind of, I think Ryan was, and this is the case with Ryan Garcia, anyways, where that jab, he's gonna flick it out. He's gonna be he's gonna know how to pick his shots very well with the jab. But this fight more or less looked like, at least towards the later rounds, towards the end of the fight, where he was more or less just pot shotting the jab. And I mean, he got knocked down like pretty good in that second round by Rolly Romero. And from there, like, you could see Rolly Romero's confidence just spike all the way up. And Ryan is more or less just trying to play defense and just counter punch, and that's not really going to work with someone like Rolly Romero, especially after he knocks you down already. And you kind of have to. The later the fight goes, the more Ryan Garcia has to actually knock out Rolly Romero, and that's not what happened. So I mean, that was definitely a disappointing uh, thing to watch on Ryan Garcia's end. But I mean, especially after all the PED talk and everything, this was his chance to really
Shut it down.
yeah,
I mean,
shut
it
it
didn't
down.
help.
Yeah.
That definitely doesn't help when you come back from that, because I think he did get suspended, right? Yeah. So like you come back from a suspension and then you lose a fight that
it's crazy. He did get
win.
suspended, and it's crazy how time flies, because he did get suspended, and now boom, he's right back in here in the main event. But man,
Just didn't work out.
Yeah, it didn't work out.
I mean, that's, it is what it is sometimes, especially with boxing. Like, it's you're not always going to have those fights that work out and are these barn burners like we had the other week with Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn. That was a crazy one. But, like, just the fact that we're getting these big name fighters either on the same card or against each other, and, like, we're getting them so much more often. Like, remember when we first started, dude, how we would talk about, like, Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder, be like, man, if only we could get these fights, like, more than once every single year. Like, now we're getting them every couple of months, really, and we're getting these huge names in the ring because they're actually getting paid. The business side isn't holding anything up, and these guys are competitors for the most part. They want to fight each other, and now that the pay is worth it, we're actually starting to see it. And I think that's almost the bigger story, is like the fact that, again, the sport is changing, and it's changing for the better. We're starting to get back to what it was like in the older days, like when we grew up, and like even before we grew up. So I'm just happy to see that. And then, I mean, before we go though, I do also want to talk about this because we were talking about it before the show. But how about Inoue, man? I mean, that's another guy. If only he was like 20 pounds.
Yeah, it's
heavier.
time to talk about straight up elite performances. Because let me give the shout out to Teofimo Lopez too, because I thought he easily had the best performance of the weekend against Arnold Barboza. I mean, just like Lopez's style in general, how slick he is with the movement, how much he moves his head, how much he's able to evade and slip punches. It's like, dude, Barboza just looked confused, and Barboza looked very good as well. That's not even to take anything away, so that's even more of a plus for Teofimo Lopez. I think at the first round he was just trying to fight from range, trying to lure Barboza in, but Barboza wasn't having it, and he was landing pretty well. But then Lopez just went to work on the body the rest of the fight, and then, I mean, he's in front of his home crowd and everything. He's showboating. I mean, yeah, that was a lot of fun to watch. I thought it was an absolutely dominant performance. And then now Naoya Inoue at Top Rank last night, on the other hand, I mean, it just, again, like, I think we're starting to see Naoya Inoue face more and more adversity in these fights of his, and he continues to just be the monster, He continues to rebound and just shake it off like nothing even happened. Gotta give credit to Ramon Cardenas, of course, because, I mean, he did knock down Naoya Inoue at the end of the day, and
that was like a legit knockdown too. I mean, that's like one of those knockdowns that could truly be a fight.
I mean, you could hear the thud. Like, I mean, Inoue looked stunned for like a split second. I mean, he had to look at the ref, and then he just shook it off, and he was perfectly okay, it seemed, afterwards. I think where Cardenas went wrong was, I think he kept going for broke on that hook. not really going for broke, but I think he was more. It was one of those things where you see the guy at the ninth down, he's kind of gonna try to keep going back to that shot and really knock the guy out. I think if Cardenas was just a bit more methodical in what he was throwing and just trying to tag Inoue more and more, I think he could have definitely got a decision one way or another. But
or he could have gotten back to that move, because the thing is, like, when you see someone kind of spam a move to try and knock someone out and they just drop someone with that same thing, like, as long as they get back to their corner's going to tell them to keep their guard up for that. And, like, in my opinion, you need to basically not necessarily change it up, but, like, start to use those other weapons to open up the weapon that you just dropped him with. Because now if he's only worried about that one shot, then he doesn't have to worry about the rest of it that much, and it's kind of easier to defend. But if you just keep someone guessing, I mean, we talk about that a lot in MMA, like, if you can just keep someone guessing, that really opens up a lot of doors. And it seemed like after that, I don't know, it just didn't really.
Yeah, that's exactly how that went, man.
That's not a knock on Inoue either. I mean, Inoue just
no,
the heart
exactly.
to come back and the intelligence to come back.
Speaking about that, it's what detractors are going to use to put Inoue down and argue why he can't be number one pound for pound. And it's like,
he truly is like the Demetrius.
Did you watch
the
really?
Like,
did you watch
the same thing?
It's crazy. That kind of standard to be held to is just,
if you're anything less than perfect, that must mean you suck.
Yeah.
Like, that's a crazy thing to think, and that's what people seem to think about Inoue, and I'll never understand that, because when you look at just the pure perspective of just watching him box, it's so impressive. That's why I say, like, man, if only he was like 20 pounds heavier.
I mean, there's just no wasted movements in what he throws. I mean, he's so calculated with every single shot that he throws, whether it's something that's going to land hard, or whether it's something that's just going to touch you up to set up something else. There's no wasted movement. He's so precise and technical, and it's a work of art for sure. So, I mean, to rebound from that so early in the fight, and then, just find every which opening to make sure that Cardenas is backed up against the ropes as much as possible, retain the center of the cage. I mean, the ring, cut off the ring from Cardenas is just, it's elite, world class, arguable number one pound for pound stuff. And speaking, just to speak about Terrence Crawford attests to his greatness and Inoue's greatness. Like, this fight right here tied Terrence Crawford for the most consecutive knockouts in a world title fight. So, yeah,
that's impressive.
It's at 11. Yep, that shit is crazy. So
I'll end it with this, man. I mean, like I've said throughout this episode, like, boxing is truly in a different position than it has been over the past few years right now, and it seems like we're getting all these huge fights, and it doesn't seem like it's stopping anytime soon. And I truly am excited to see the future
dude,
right now, man.
You gotta love it, man.
And the
like
present,
our dude
and the
Turkey is coming through for us, getting to talk about these fights on the pod. Plenty to talk about as well. Whether it's in the ring or it's out of the ring.
You got me like a month ago on April Fool's Day with that tweet when he said he was done with boxing. I forgot what day it was. I was like, no.
Dude, I was hoping that would get you. Yeah, I even with the text I sent you, I was like, dude,
you left
this
it
guy's
vague.
the best. Yeah, this guy's the best, because I just knew it was like, there's no way that this sport is at its peak right now, and he's just, that's it, it's over.
All right, peace. Thanks for the cheese. Conor McGregor said, thanks for the cheese.
Yeah, but that was a very fun weekend in the boxing world and MMA, obviously the UFC card.
Let's hope we get more boxing pods. I mean, it's already in the past couple of years we've probably like tripled the amount that we had in the years before that. So let's hope that keeps trending upwards, because as you know, initially I was a boxing fan before I ever got into MMA, and now that both sports are doing pretty well right now, it's been fun to watch.
It just feels important again,
It does.
Because you got all these belts on the line.
All different weight classes too. It's not just one. There's stars everywhere. So I definitely think it's.
But just I mean, this is more or less the promotion, IBF and all that. Going back to Canelo's fight with William Skull, the fact that he had to take this fight to get his belt back, that he had to vacate to fight Berlanga. Just the whole mandatory ranking stuff was just.
This is why we need TKO boxing to take over the game. And yes, my MMA fan is coming out, but we need it, man. We need it to be like the UFC. Let's make all of these other things not matter.
Hear it from us as to why Dana White coming over is a good thing.
Like, yeah, man. That's just my point. You're gonna have the best fight, the best.
We really care about the sport too, so.
Yeah, we like boxing. We don't want to see it die or anything. We love both sports. It's possible. Mm-hmm. It is possible, believe it or not. But yeah, man, I do think no matter what happens, that TKO boxing and Dana White coming over to boxing is gonna help things in the long term.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely intrigued to see it. And like I said, let's hope we get more boxing pods in the future. But till next time.
Yes. Hey, lock